I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatch's live stream number 48. If you're looking to get into an art community, you're looking to sharpen your artistic eye, want a little inspiration, or maybe jump into an art challenge, you have arrived in the right place. I'm illustrator Clint Cearley, best known for my work with Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, and also as the creator of the Swatch's community and the Swatch's art educational material. So welcome to the live stream. We're going to be kind of killing a couple of minutes here with some announcements in order to allow people some time to join in the stream live. If you are watching this in recording and you don't want to get the good announcements, there are some good information here if you're not familiar with what's going around. Then yeah, stick around. It looks like everything's green on this side, so I'm going to push that out of the way. Okay, so live streams are mainly about the art challenges that I put on, and you, the viewers and patrons of the channel, can create your images, send them to me, and I try to give you a quick feedback. Now, we have about 20 images that have been sent in for this particular challenge, which gives us about 5 minutes apiece for each image, and I want to be trying to run right on that sort of time schedule, putting the live stream in about 2 hours. So let's go ahead and jump over here and talk about some of the announcements before I forget. And we'll try to do a little recap of these at the end as well. Of course, if you're joining in live, thank you. I know that it's probably not that convenient for a lot of people. And you're taking time out of your day in order to join me, and I do appreciate it. And if you have some questions for me, feel free to jump in the chat and ask me there. I know I had some submitted to me on Facebook. I totally forgot to grab those before. So I might record an extra little video this week where I'm just answering some of the questions from Facebook. So feel free to go out there, put those out there. I haven't forgotten about you. I just had a really busy afternoon and I didn't get to it. Sorry. But we've got a couple of people here. George, always good to see you. Thank you for sticking around, coming back in this week. Beniamino, hey man, how's it going? Doing good. Will, Harlot, good to see you. Samuel, Matt. 1 a.m. Matt is hardcore. Thanks for joining, Matt. Won't survive till the end of stream watching this in bed. Oh, I've done that a couple of times on some other streams myself. Yeah, it'll be right about 2 hours before we finish. But of course, this is all recorded. You can catch it a bit later. Okay, so announcement number 1. The ebook that I wrote on characters. Designing and drawing is on sale. Okay, so the next challenge, which we'll talk to right after I get through these announcements, will have a character design theme to it, and you might want to pick up the ebook on character designs. If you're not that familiar or just want a good resource where to get some ideas on how to approach the whole thing of character design, remember this is an ebook. It is not a video. It's about 66 pages and steps you through the whole process. We talk about shapes, methodologies as to how to lay out different patterns on the characters. Talk about the, sorry, still have a bit of cough. I've been congested for a while. We talk about things like using the silhouette, the values, the colors, all to make the character very unique. Anyway, it's on sale on various sites. That would include, check out ArtStation. ArtStation has a really great marketplace now. Mine is artstation.com/myname Clint Cearley/store. It's 25% off, okay? It's making it about $11. It's a good deal. It really is. Second announcement. We're going to do a little winner for challenges. There we go. So if you enter, starting with the next challenge with the sketch, if you enter a sketch and a final for the next challenge, then you will be entered to win a free product from the store. This is just randomly chosen. I'm not picking like whose art is the best, but in order to qualify, you have to send in both a sketch and a final for the next competition, and you get your pick of any product from the store. just a little bonus to help, promote people to engage in both parts of the challenge. We got some more people in here. Art of Viscerals. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Galena, I see you there. Hi, how's it going? Next week, we're going to alternate back to 2 p.m. for the next week live stream. This is for my European viewers. So we had a really good viewing last time for that time slot, and we're going to jump back to that next week. I couldn't do it today. I had things this afternoon, and next week though should be fine. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and announce. So there you go. Also, the sale is good on CubeBrush as well. If you are familiar with CubeBrush, you can go to cubebrush.co / Clint Cearley or swatches. I forget which it is. Anyway, same price out there as well. And the last announcement is consultations are available. If you want a solid hour one-on-one video chat with me about whatever you want to talk about in your art, that's possible. You can go to art-mentor.com, get the whole page of details right out there. It's not super cheap, but it's well worth the money to save you the trial and error of having to figure out some stuff. So you don't know what you need to be practicing on? I help give you some ideas, walk you through that. You have some, maybe just some, I would say like mental, emotional things kind of holding you back, don't feel like you're good enough, wondering if you should be able to get into the industry right now, or maybe you should keep practicing. We'll talk about it, figure out what's going on. Maybe you want to set up a portfolio, not sure which pieces to put in there, or what new pieces should you create in order to help round out your portfolio. We'll talk about that as well. You contact me, we will go over whatever you need to. Hit me up over on artmentor.com, get the full details. I'll catch you out there. Okay, so that is it. Oh, nothing about on the third point. That's right. I was just putting the address there. Hopefully that shows up. Consultations are available at artmentor.com. There we go. You have to be, yeah, Samuel asked a good question here. Let's go ahead and jump over and talk about that. The challenges are available to everyone, yes and no. They are free to everyone in order, if you want to just join in and share your stuff on the Swatches Facebook group. In order to get your stuff reviewed on stream, it is for patrons. That is for people that go out to patreon.com/swatches and join at the $10 level or higher. That is not the only thing you get at the $10 level. You get all of the normal Patreon rewards. You get the hour video, you get the files, you get that sort of stuff. That is the normal. The bonus is that you also get your stuff reviewed during the live streams, okay? So that's not the only thing you're paying for if you go out there and join. But yeah, it just got to the point where I was getting like 40 entries per challenge live stream, and it was taking like 3 hours or more, even going at a fast speed. So I had to slow it down a little bit, and I made it for patrons. And also just to help kind of recoup my time putting it into the live streams. So there you go. All right, what are they trying to do on this challenge? They are doing, let's see, duo art challenge. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about what the, let's quickly go over what this challenge is about, and then we'll take a look at the new challenge. This challenge is about duo, 2 characters. We're not read the whole thing here, but basically having one humanoid character towards the foreground and one really big character or construct in the background. These are aligned characters. They're not enemies. They're not fighting. It's a fairly passive scene. They're not really trying to do anything. They're standing there, or they're flying, or they're watching something. And the general idea was like a wizard or mage in some sort of beast, like a dragon, a soldier with some sort of mech or armored, war machine behind them, a sky pirate with a ship or some sort of sky whale behind them, or a dark warrior and a titan of some variety behind them. And yep, there we go. So that was what they're trying to achieve. That's what we'll look at in just a moment. But everybody likes to go ahead and look at the next challenge. So we're going to look at that right now. And then we'll jump over to reviewing the finals for the duo challenge. The next challenge, I think I might even try to skim some time to do this because this would be really cool. I hope you guys will like this. No, you guys are going to like it. I just know you are. The next challenge is, and all of a sudden this thing thinks I want to open iCloud. I have no idea why. I don't, actually. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Legend of Ganon is this one. I was thinking, let's do something where we get classic characters from games or movies and we reimagine them. So we're using The Legend of Zelda, but this time it's Legend of Ganon. And we're reimagining the world of Hyrule and the principal characters of Link, Zelda, and Ganon. Decades have passed since Link and Zelda failed to defeat Ganon in their use. Evil won, and the heroes have been living in the cracks in the fringes ever since. Depict a lineup of Link, Zelda, and Ganon. Link, now about 60 years old. This is the old man Logan version of Link. This is the Dark Knight Returns version, like the old comic book where Batman's about 60 or 70 years old and has to come out of retirement. Yeah, that's Link. The youthful hope and energy has been replaced with grim determination and scars. He survives on a lifetime of acquired skills, sheer willpower, and old age cunning. The broken master sword hangs at his side, an heirloom of the past. Zelda, now about 50 years old, she holds herself well, though she has long since dropped the moniker of princess. The idea being that the kingdom is no longer there to reign. There is no lineage or people, so she is no longer a princess of anything. With her power from the goddesses waning, with the rise of Ganon, she has been forced to acquire more magics to survive over the years, and not all of them are based in light. Only faint traces of her past, royal past, are visible. Ganon, he is now a dark god, ruling the land with power and fear. The prolonged use of the Triforce of power for dark purposes has altered him. Depict him in either, you have an option here, either a lich-like version of his Gyarados form. Remember, Ganon is not human. He's a version of human which is called Gyarados, which is the dark skin and the red hair. You can take a look at the lore. Form in his more monstrous version of his boar form. In some of the Zelda games, you see him and he's this big hulking creature with tusk and everything. You can do either one of those. If he is in his Gyarados form, he's more lich-like. His skin is sallow and dark, and his features are kind of shrunken, and he emits like a dark magic around him. His shape is more deadly, just almost like a necromancer version. And otherwise show him in his monstrous boar form that's even more corrupted. This is something that just kind of reeks of dark magic. Also, accompanying him, show sort of behind him, is the shadow of Ganon, a magical dark visage capable of assuming various forms and fighting for him. So these are a lineup of some of the images over the games. It is dangerous to go alone. Take these. And search for other versions to help give you ideas. Obviously, there has been many incarnations of all of these characters throughout the mini games they have been in. So go take a look for yourself and see what elements you might want to base yours on. I know that Link, in the last one, Breath of the Wild, it has a really nice set of different clothing and armors that Link can wear. So maybe now in the future, he is having, a bit of some of those armors. And now let's talk a little bit about the character design approach to this. I'm trying to give just a little lore as to what's going on here. But one of the questions you might want to ask yourself is, why now? So Link is about 60. Why now is he once again going to try to defeat Ganon? Why now? What's changed? Why does he think he might have an edge this time? And that could give you an idea of where to go. Perhaps he has acquired or found, the fable location of a mythic weapon more powerful than the Master Sword. Maybe it's a bow of some kind, a magical whip. I don't know what it is. A bazooka. Who knows? But maybe he has a new magical weapon. And he thinks finally, maybe with this, he can defeat Ganon. Possibly, he and Zelda have aligned themselves with a dark force in a enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of way, where the other dark force wants to overthrow Ganon, who's cornered the market on dark power. And so they will align themselves with dark creatures in order to try to help overthrow him. Maybe Link is no longer the lone hero that he used to be, that he is in fact now a general who is leading an army that he's been training for the last 2 decades, who will go against Ganon and his forces. So he is not the singular hero, but he is now the leader of the army, of the rebellion, if you want to say it that way. And there you go. That's what we're going to be hitting on next time. Of course, you have 1 week to create your sketches of the characters and 1 more week after that to submit your finals. Okay. Now, anything else on that? Oh yeah, this is just more of a character design. You don't have to do a whole scene. It's going to be kind of like this. Just give me an image of Ganon, give me an image of Zelda, give me an image of Link. They can be over a pretty simple background, just like a solid color, a simple gradient tone. This is more of a pitch image if we were going to try to create this and pitch it to Nintendo, where they would need to just see who these characters are. It's not about anything else other than understanding who these are. Now remember that this is very clarity focused. It needs to be understandable, not just a lot of random stuff, not fuzzy, not rough. And take it one step at a time. We don't necessarily need to see color in the sketches. If it is color, don't worry about doing full lighting. Just flat tones is fine, just to understand what the color pattern is and what the color, I would guess, color scheme that you're kind of working with is on each character. So there you go. Now let's jump over to the finals for the duo challenge. It is similar to the Dagon and Daphne challenge that we had a couple of months back. Yes. But they should be still somewhat recognizable as the characters of Link, Zelda, and Ganon/Ganondorf. Okay. Now, I went ahead and I already opened up and made notes on all of these before now in order to save my brain, because it gets to this time of day and my brain starts slowing down. So, we will just be opening these up and talking through some of the points I've already made. Okay. Will is asking, so it's just character design, not an illustration. Yes, correct. On the Legend of Ganon Challenge, it is primarily a illustration. I mean, character design. Yeah. We don't need a whole background or anything. All right, so this one, first image up, is by Andrew Doris. And he's gone with the wizard and dragon combination, obviously. And I'm making new layers so I can make line. Yeah, there we go. And my initial thought is it's good. Obviously, we're going to suggest some changes, but the dragon looks solid, and you got some good forms and movement to him. And we got some little photo bashing going on down here in the foreground. And yeah, something else I'm going to say about the entries this time. Really good job, guys. I mean, seriously. You've really been stepping it up on this one, and it's obvious that you've been putting in time and a lot of effort to these. I mean, I love seeing that because I think a lot of these can be already or soon to be polished up and go in a gallery for your, showing your stuff. So that's awesome. All right, so on this one, we have a couple of notes here. We've got 5 different things I want to chat about. Number 1 is perspective. And I'll tell you what, guys. I change my voice while I'm talking. Yep, I know that. And I don't do it just to sound weird. While I drive somewhere by myself, that's almost how I spend most of my time. I play around with different voices. And yeah, it comes out while I'm doing the live streams. And for the longest time, I thought, that is not very professional. But I thought, you know what? Too bad. Because that's who I am. And I like to play around with voices depending on what I'm looking at. So there you go. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. Now, talking about perspective, we got a couple of things going on. One is we're looking upwards. So, oh yeah, we got that silly thing with the pen not wanting to show up because I hit that other button. Okay. So we have a perspective looking upwards a lot at that guy, which means that we should have everything running to a vanishing point up here somewhere. But we're not really getting that because this is going to its own perspective up this way, and this is completely flat, straight up and down. And vertical perspective, here we go. So it needs to be something more along this line where it's all going to be unified to this sort of perspective grid. I'm not exactly sure where that point is. I should be right up, almost right above us. I think it's a little off of there. Anyway, you got some fudge on this. I copied that and pasted it and adjusted it around a little bit so that better fits what's going on with the image. There you go. Now, also, I feel like this looks very washed out compared to how much closer it is to us than the dragon. So I'm thinking it could have darker tones. It could also have lighter tones than that. The whole thing is just very dark for a scene that has a lot of sunlight. So, yeah, I don't know why it keeps jumping it smaller. Yeah, I came across this problem a while back, and I don't remember how I fixed it. Oh, yeah, because it thinks it's an eraser. Okay. So, on this, we probably still need to get more light out of that. The whole idea is that it should both have some higher highlights and some darker shadows than what it did have. So you got to push up some of the lights there on that because it's just too bright of a scene. So, there we go. Another thing is the perspective on the dragon. The dragon looks fine if it was all flat to us. But it's not flat to us. the bottom of it is significantly further away than the head of it, which means we should be getting more perspective of the dragon. And you might want to get the back half of the dragon and follow this, right? So this width here should be that width if it's down there. See what I mean? Because I'm following those lines down with the perspective. So the body should be getting increasingly smaller than that as it gets further away. The legs getting much littler than that as they get away because it's so much further. The wings also I could see being significantly larger. Like this seems like a really big body compared to that size of wings. So the wings look good. They're well rendered. Let's just make them bigger, right? Let's just make them almost, 50% bigger at least. And that would be helpful. I will let go of the idea that this guy isn't as close to us. The duo challenge was kind of asking for a human character to be more in the foreground. And I'll give you the play on that one because you pretty much match everything else on the challenge. And another point, perspective, motion. Yeah, this motion was a little odd with the, he's almost going completely sideways where it looks like the motion of the dragon is more just almost this way or a little bit at an angle perhaps that way. It seems like they should match up better, like the red thing that he's going on should be more like that or like this than this, because that's not the way the dragon was going. Another thing is the positioning of the two of them, and it makes me question, like, I feel like this guy's trying to about swallow that guy, and that's really not what we're going for. They should be allies. So it just feels like he is trying to catch him. And in order to change that, you might put him on the other side. So obviously he's not in any jeopardy. So I mean, you would have, compositionally wouldn't work as well to have him over there. Unless maybe you make him, bigger and you have him more in the foreground so they're not on the same plane. Feels like they're very close on the same planes right now. So you got a couple of things to think about with that. I assume that you're trying to give the idea that he has some sort of magic effect that he is flying on, but it's so perfect. It's so computer perfect brushstroke sort of look that it really doesn't come off as magic. See if you can come up with something else. Maybe it fizzles more at the end, or maybe there's little, bits of magic dust or flecks or something that sort of comes off of it as he goes, a little trail behind it, just to keep it from being so perfectly that way. You might also have like a bit more of the red going around this thing, kind of giving the idea that this thing is casting, the trail behind it. But there you go. All right, well, those were my thoughts over it, and thank you for joining. It's an excellent image, just some little tweaks here and there, very little repaints, I imagine. So, good job, Andrew. Beniamino is up next. Went with the mecha one. All right, so Beniamino, one of the strongest pieces I've seen from you. You're doing good. You've obviously been putting in some time. This is a really sharp piece. I'm going to zoom up for some of the viewers that want a tighter view of that. Look at that. Very sharp, very clean. Yeah, well rendered. And simple concept, but like I said last time, you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes a straightforward concept and composition is exactly what you need, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Yeah, cool stuff. Now, What can we do to improve this? What's working and what's maybe some sticking points? 4 thoughts. Number 1 is the values. The value between her and the background thing are getting really similar. So I'm thinking it would be good to, I'm going to set that to color. You see, when you put it to black and white, the two of them have all the same values. And we need a little more distinction between those besides just the thin edge light. So that was the thought on that. We'll talk about how to fix that. Number 2 is throwing some skylight on this guy, where we have a lot of bright sky up here, but it's not really showing up. Anything facing upwards should be distinctly lighter. And unless you're wanting to go with a very silhouetted view where it's much brighter back here, so some options with that. Number 3, and we'll do a quick little paint on this. I just want to talk about each piece. Number 3 is this posing of this leg and foot. You have it coming at an angle, but once it gets to the knee, it's straight forward to us. And that doesn't seem right. It still needs to go at that angle. So it still needs to be turned the other direction a little bit. So, the kneecap thing needs to be a bit more over here. And then as the, shin comes down, the foot needs to be going off at that same angle that the body is facing. So it needs to be going off a bit more like that and not like this. Yep. So, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Back up. Number 4 is the gold glow. Yeah, you have the gold glow here. You have some gold glow in her. And that really is something that we could play up more. So let's make a new layer here real quick and drop this off and grab this. Nope, I just need I get used to my brushes on my other computer. So I'm going to make a new layer and set it to lighten. Let me go ahead and pull it over here if you want to see that. And I'm going to set that down, if it will let me. Nope, I'll just type it in. And I'm going to grab this sky color back here, and I'll paint over this. I'm going to grab that part. So if you want to add atmosphere between the two of them, one of the ways you can do it is paint it with the color of the atmosphere. And you establish the atmosphere is kind of this color. So that's what I'll use. And that pushes the two of those apart a little bit. I think I'll just make a new layer, normal layer. There we go. I would also like to see a bit more, this is obviously daytime with these colors. So we can have basically everything facing upwards can have more of a brightness to it, right? I feel like something's not matching up there. So once it gets into the shadow, it's going to flatten out a lot. And there's not going to be that much detail or difference in things in the shadow, but there would be a wider difference between the things in the light and in the shadow. Okay, Joshua just asked, is Patreon content coming out today or tomorrow? It's coming out right after this live stream. I was trying to get everything done before the live stream. That was the intent, but I just didn't get everything I needed to get done. So I am sending out the messages after the live stream. And then if you miss the content, then it will be available soon out on the stores. But you'll have to wait till that comes out. Or if you want to sign up while I'm doing the live stream, if you're wanting to catch it, then you can do it while I'm doing the live stream. That would be your other option. Okay, now you've got this beautiful golden color, and I'm thinking that wouldn't be a bad thing to also do. So doing like a linear dodge, kind of picking that gold, because it contrasts really well against all the blue tones. Look how nice that is. Oh, that's lovely. I love painting in light like that. You can have that kind of showing up on a couple of different spots there. Yeah. Maybe get like one little light in behind one of these things, right? Just a couple little spots, you get that nice golden light back up underneath stuff. And then on her, she's got that, she could have some of that golden light from the thing behind her, right? Catching that side of her. That wouldn't be bad either. And that, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, having this part to be warmer, kind of more golden, isn't, it's actually a good choice because it sort of separates the foreground part from the background part, is to have them be a bit different tones. And maybe there's like little lights, you know, on in the hands and in the joint areas somewhere. Just little indicator lights, something like that. So there you go. That would be the sort of approach I would think about it. Just helps separate the scene a little bit from the different distances. These guys back here could probably even be simplified even more than that. Is that a normal layer? Oh, okay, that's linear dot, wrong layer. There we go. These buildings can even be lightened up a bit past that. And you can treat them just about like silhouettes with almost no detail. Then come back in, and the areas that are receiving light can basically just go white. So, you know, right along an edge maybe, you get a little detail, or maybe one of the buildings is, you know, catching almost direct light, so it kind of has different pattern to it, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah, great piece, Benamino. I love this. Exactly the sort of thing that, you know, gets my sci-fi heart going. So there we go. Hopefully you found that helpful. My computer is going incredibly slow for some reason. Nope, there we go. Okay, we're just doing alphabetically. Christoph Ott. Okay, some stuff here, but also some sticky stuff here. Good stuff, sticky stuff. Couple of things. We're going to look at 3 different stuff. 1 is clarity, 2 is composition, number 3 is designs. Number 1 is clarity. Let's talk about clarity. Clarity is the viewer being able to understand what they are looking at. And in some cases, it's okay not to be clear on that, but it really, most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, clarity is very important. And in this case, I feel like you have chosen to go with fancy brushes and lots of texture and like scattery brush strokes and chalky stuff that leaves me going, I'm not sure what this is. Like, is this supposed to be fabric? Is this magic? Why is this glowing? Is this rock, or is this supposed to be its wing? Are we in a cave? There's just, that's one of the things that happens when you start using a lot of texture, is that you can start losing clarity and understanding of what you're looking at. So I'm going to suggest back off from the fancy brushes. For right now, just the round brush. Regular old round brush is all you need. This guy right here, pressure sensitive. If I hit that button, pressure sensitive, normal hard edge to it, you're good. All right, we don't need the other ones right now. So that would be helping to resolve some of this. The thing is, it's easy to try to fudge things that you don't want to paint, or fudge elements that you don't know the answer to. It's like, I'm not sure what's happening, scattery brush. Like, I know that you just didn't know what was happening, so you used a scattery brush. Not that a scattery brush is what you actually needed right there. So I'm just going to tell you that because it's easy to get sucked into that sort of viewpoint and that sort of crutch. And the sooner that you can learn to paint without it, the better it ultimately be for you. Now, let's talk about composition. Composition. Yep, number 2. Now, here is... got a couple of things going on in composition that's a little funky. We have this nice, very clear circular shape right towards the middle of our scene that has absolutely nothing of any visual interest in it. And that's problematic. When you make such a clear circular, triangular, any kind of simple, like geometric shape in your scene, people are going to look at it. It is one of the things that you do in order to actually draw focus to a focal point. But you're drawing focus to something that has nothing in it and is of no significance to the scene. So we've got to change that or somehow make it useful to us. The other thing is we sort of don't have a composition going on. So we've got old circle here. And then we've got this geometric shape going on. And then we have her kind of off to the side. And we have this. And she kind of follows that. But none of this is working together. So one idea is, if you want to kind of keep what you already have, then what we could do is this, where old curvy neck in the background is coming around this way, and then she is in the middle of it. So she would be here with her head here, and that way you're actually putting a focal point inside of the compositional tool of the circle, and that in the background she is being encircled by the shape of the dragon. And that becomes useful to us. These shapes, I don't know if they're cave or what, but it would be more useful if they were wings to the dragon, so that they're coming up here and they're spreading out like that, and then you still get this arcing shape in the background. But you need to put this very centered. Right now, it's not like she's on 1/3, which is fine, but There's not anything on the second, third kind of balancing her. So just put them both in the middle and then have that guy wrapping around and then have the wings coming off, and then that other wing can be coming off and going off like that way. So yeah, that would be helpful. And then the last point is the designs. The designs, I just don't feel like you really thought out who she is, and this is kind of, it makes me think of like a flapper's dress from like the 1920s. It's like that or a nightgown. I mean, it's that sort of fit and shape, and it doesn't match the dark skin, tribal tattoos, bone dragon in the background. So I'm thinking we probably need to change her attire in order to match the design of the scene. Just a lot of contrast between all of these different elements. With the dragon, there are some great images of undead dragons that have been rendered in the past. I went out there, I just Googled like bone dragon, I think, and found a couple of images that can give you some really good ideas. What you had was like first thought. If it's a bone dragon, what does it look like? And you did like the simple, straightforward bone dragon. But there's some cool ways to do variations of it and try to think about different ways you could push it. Different shapes of the head, really getting some cool shapes and spikes coming off of there. The vertebrae don't have to be like human vertebrae. So this is a good option. All of these extra little, pieces coming off that would hold up different parts of the skin. This is a wonderful concept where it's like a rib cage, each one of these, or you might want to think of it like a snake, right? The snake body is essentially the same thing as the dragon head. So something like that going on. Also, the light and the magic inside of the dragon. You could have the same red magic that she has emanating somehow from the dragon itself. This is a cool version. You can see where they start modifying the different shapes of the vertebra and the shapes of the skull in order to get some cool things going on. So yeah, go take a look at those, see how you can push it and twist it and add to it. The neck is like super thin, and in order to still make it seem threatening, we need to find ways to sort of beef up the volume of the vertebra. And that's one of the things that these guys had to do on theirs as well. So Christoph, there you go. Best wishes to you, going and working with that. Ezekiel, I assume that's how you say that. Hopefully I'm right. There we go. Okay, Ezekiel, he says, unfinished, how is composition scale concept? I'm going to be straightforward with you, Ezekiel. I'm not sure you read the brief. Or if you did, you sort of went off the rails somewhere. I'm not going to be able to say much to you on this as far as the image, because we looked at the brief. Humanoid character in the foreground, massive background character or construct in the background. I'm sorry, I should have got some water. And the background character should take up most of the image. The combination of characters isn't anything that was listed in the brief. So, I mean, one of the things I can say here is we all do this at times and to varying degrees, where you start working on something and that leads to an idea, and you start taking that for a while, and then it leads to another idea, and you start following that for a while. And eventually you find that it no longer even matches what was really asked for in the first place. So I think that's what's happened, and one of the best advice I can give to you right now is you got to learn to follow what the brief actually asks for. And these challenges are set up in order to give you a bit more understanding of what it would be like to work on a commissioned piece. And one of the lessons that you got to learn is there is a certain amount of wiggle room that art directors will usually allow you to have. And this is too much. An art director would send this back to you and say, okay, this isn't what I asked for. Go back, reread the brief, and give me a new concept. So that's kind of what I got to tell you. As I said before, if I don't feel like you're really trying to follow what I asked for, I'm not going to review the image. Because then people would just send in whatever they wanted to, and that's not what the art challenge is about. Falling back to what I said earlier, which is you don't have to get fancy with it. That's one of the things I talked about in the last episode is you don't have to get fancy with it. And you don't need to come up with a whole narrative behind it of what's happening in the scene and what's going on in the story. No. Character in the foreground, humanoid, big creature or construct in the background. They're looking the same direction. It's sort of a passive scene. Doesn't really need anything going on. Okay? So that's kind of like the vanilla. Just take the obvious thing. Also, look at the references. I posted references. They're all really close to what I was looking for. So make sure that you take a look at those. And if you're not sure how to approach it, just base it right off of one of those. And that's not a problem. So here we go. I'm going to leave you with that. Next up, Galena. Galena has probably the most unusual style that we usually get to see. A lot of realistic stuff here on the channel, but we've got a different style here with this one, more of a storybook approach to it, and I love seeing that. As usual, guys, whatever style is your normal style, as long as I can understand what I'm looking at, I'm good with it. You want to do fairy tale, you want to do cartoony, unless I specify otherwise, it's all good. That also goes for the next Legend of Ganon art challenge. So if you want to do like a more cartoony Legend of Zelda Wind Waker sort of approach to it, that's fine. You want to do a grittier, more like Twilight Princess sort of approach, that's good too. Whatever matches your normal style is fine with the challenges. Just keep it clean, keep it understandable so I can better give you some feedback on it. Okay, so on this one, we have a little character in the foreground. I don't know who she is, what she's really about. But on this scene, I don't even care that much. It's not that important. But she is looking for, I guess, like the whale, and the whale is like hiding around this pillar. So, okay. First up is composition. And I wouldn't want to talk about that because it's very left heavy. Like most of the stuff that's happening on this scene is, right heavy, sorry. Most of the stuff is happening way over here, and there's not that much going on this side of the image. And I just don't see where you would lose anything by just centering it. Just getting this whole thing and giving a good little push over to the side. And then you can, paint out this stuff. And that way, everything just kind of lines up a little better, and it's not off kilter any. That would be one thought. The dynamic of having the jellyfish things fly up and around here is fine. That keeps you going in the scene. Number 2 is scene day night. This is something that kind of confused me with the scene. Now, I'm not looking that this has to be realistic, but I don't know if this is supposed to be a night scene or a day scene. With all these sort of blue tones, it gives me the feeling like maybe it's trying to be nighttime, but then we have a yellow sun instead of maybe like a white or blue moon. And I think it would be stronger if it was clearly either day or night. The sky maybe need to be pushed to blue if it was daytime, or use some warmer colors maybe in the clouds if it was daytime. Otherwise, if it's nighttime, shifting more over to the blue sides. Yeah, so there you go. That's one of the things that I would want to see answered just as a viewer. Number 3 is the colors. The colors with the well and this rock thing are very similar. And I think it would be better to just separate those a little bit. Maybe the rock thing is a bit more gray, or maybe it's a bit more green. One way or the other, just giving a bit more separation between the two of those, because when it gets smaller, they really do bleed together. And I'm getting the idea that, yeah, he's kind of hiding behind it, but we can still just visually have a little more separation between the two of those. The last point is stand out. No. Stand out. Oh, yeah, that's what I was talking about, making him stand out. I want to talk about the textures. I forgot anyway, something else I forgot to write it down earlier. And that is the textures here. Try not to use this brush. How can I say it? There's nothing wrong with using a brush, a cloudy, fuzzy brush like this. Nothing inherently wrong with it, but I will say that it's kind of like there was a word for it and it is not coming to me. Faux pas. It's kind of faux pas, like using Comic Sans in graphic design. Like, Comic Sans is not a professional font. You wouldn't use that on really any professional project. It just has this kind of stigma about it, and using textury, fuzzy brushes like this has a similar thing to it. So I just want you to be aware of that, and that it's usually the novice's simple way of trying to do something and add visual information, but they don't know how to do it better. So in this case, try to think how you might use a pattern in order to do the same effect instead of just using a fuzzy brush. You've got a nice little pattern going on with like some flecky shapes indicating, a rocky texture here. You've got some nice lines, straight, lines going on with the well, giving that a little texture. And same sort of thing, you can have these being, whatever color you decide they need to be. And then using maybe some lines, like they just have cloud patterns within them. And it doesn't have to be realistic, right? Nothing about this scene is necessarily realistic. But these could all have just overlapping cloud patterns. And that's what gives them visual information. This is more clean. It's more professional. It shows more skill, shows more time and effort was put into it. So, and the same sort of things with these just It's just some sort of Photoshop manipulation contortion. It would be more interesting to see that you came up with some interesting pattern that these guys could follow, and maybe, you know, it's got little spots on it, or whatever the pattern is that you find that you like. You know, use that, and then let that tell it instead of just filtering and warping things. Yeah. Okay. I really don't want to be hard on you on that, but I do want you to be aware of it. Yeah. So hopefully you take that the right way. Giles. Okay, 3 different major points. Number 1, the concept. I like the concept. I guess, oh yeah, I have 5 points. I couldn't see those. I like the overall concept here. This dude is pretty cool. Got the dude on his shoulder with the split sword. That's fine. So good on that. Number 2, one of the first things that I want to see addressed is the visual distinction between these two fellas. They're both black. And I can't hardly make out the difference between the two of those. And it's not a point where we want loss between the two of them. We want there to be more understanding between the two of them. So we've got to light this in such a way that maybe this guy's a bit lighter than that thing behind it, or that thing is maybe catching some light on its shoulder and his darker silhouette standing out. Whatever you find the solution to be, it needs to be found, and he needs to be, you know, pulled out from behind and not be lost to the darkness behind him. Okay, number 3, the pose. The pose is a little funky. And maybe that's because I can't see it very well. But we have him in not a very aggressive or strong pose. His elbow like comes to here, and then, I mean, his arm comes to like here, and then shoulder, and then his head seems like really low. I feel like his waist is like here, but his knee is way down here. I think maybe you sketched this in without having sketched in the proper anatomy underneath it. So I'm going to say go back, take pose reference if you don't have one. If you have one, recheck it, re-sketch, and this is something I do, right? I'll sketch out a character, I'll start painting it, and then I'll go back and either re-sketch it, or I will get my original anatomy drawing, put it back over top, and make sure everything still fits correctly. And then as I was painting it, things didn't get shifted off. Because I've done it where, things get shifted off, and where the waist goes over to one side, or the arm gets too high or low. When you start adding armor and stuff, things can visually move around a bit on you. So double check that. Also consider making him a bit stronger in his pose. Looks like he's just kind of laying back. He's like this really passive thing. Okay, next up, number 4. We've got just some kissing lines, a little tangent, where the end of this blade is running right into the angle of the face right there. So that's a little weird. We can either chop it off, sooner, so that it can clearly end in this lighter area of the face, or it needs to probably continue a bit further so that it's clearly past that division and those angles don't line up, at the end of there. So it's a smaller thing, but it's something to be aware of. Number 5. This is a good place where you can throw in some nice color. So here we can be looking at like gum color, like the gum of your teeth in your mouth. That can be all like pinky. Teeth also can have some good color to them. They could be maybe a little blue, little color to them. They can be warmer generally at the base, And if this guy eats a lot of stuff and doesn't brush his teeth, they can be a bit dirty, a bit yellowed at the base. And then they can get a little bit greener and bluer towards the tips. We're just talking about teeth in general. And that allows you to get some more color on there. Maybe adding a bit more of this nice pink color. And this also helps to expand out the color palette a little bit. And this is also a good place where we can throw some color up in around this eye, right? I talk about some skin tones and skin maps on the next video that's coming out here in just a little bit. And you can see some blues maybe kind of up in there. And then when you get these off of being so flat and you get a bit more value into them, then you can start adding in some form. So you can see where the skin is kind of forming around these guys. And then you can start adding like highlights in some of the teeth. And because it's probably wet, then it's going to be catching light and little highlight patterns. Might be moist around the eye too. Yeah. So there you go. That sort of approach there. And that would help just to give him a lot more life to the skin. Makes him feel like a real monster. Got some flesh and blood in there. I like the golden color here. This is kind of weird. I overall like his design. I'm not sure what these are. These eyelashes? I'm going to say either you need to really play that up so that they're eyelashes, or just get rid of them. They're not doing a lot. So maybe just get rid of those. And you can play up whatever this magical energy is. And I'm thinking of having this thing look in the direction that that guy's pointing. That was something else. It looks like he's looking at that guy rather than the way that he's pointing. So I'm thinking to just have him look that direction. You can play up some of this. This is also somewhere where you could have a bit of that wonderful orange color. And it's running up in between some of these. So it sort of originates. And you don't want it to be all the same all the way down. So there's certain areas that maybe have brighter spots of it, and it kind of interweaves into this blackness. So it keeps the black from just being completely flat. And then maybe he has some of the same, instead of the greenish gold, it has more of that same orangey cast to him as well. So, yeah. Okay. So there's some ideas with that, Giles. I think you're doing good. Let's punch up some of the tones, flesh it out a little bit, consider adding some more of that wonderful gold tone around, and we need to pull this guy out and make him stand out a bit more. Oh yeah, one other thing I forgot is the perspective. We're looking down on this fellow, so we need the perspective that his mouth is going to be going at this angle and his chin as well. So it would be getting like that. I was copying it. And something along that line. like that. Okay, that's it for that one. Yeah, what way to go next? Iona. I am using a snippet of your image for the cover of this video. If that is not acceptable to you, let me know. I'm using like this little section with the two of them right there. I made a nice thumbnail. So I will replace that if you're not happy, but I do have a little credit to your name in the description. Okay, so this is another really solid piece. This is one that doesn't have all that much detail. Like you can tell they put time into the face and like around this eye. So it's got details there, but the rest of this is really not that detailed. I mean, the folds are very straightforward and just blocked in. A lot of the scales and stuff are not very detailed. So, but it works extremely well because it has excellent values and the composition works and the colors are working pretty well. So where do we go from here? What can we do to push it even further? I love the shapes on this. You got some wonderful shapes here. And the pose works very well for this image. I don't remember what I put on each one of them. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. So number one is the frame. With the frame, there is a lot of this that really isn't doing much. So all of that I'm really interested in is here. And the top part of this image is sort of redundant. So I'm going to suggest taking that out. Right now, this is the image divided into thirds. And there's nothing landing on either one of these thirds. If you pull that across, there's nothing that hits on any of those. However, if you get the thirds and you squash it, and you move the top of the canvas down to right about there, and you cut off the top of it, now all of a sudden you get the eye and the hand and the head right along that third axis across the image. And that would make it an overall stronger image. So that's my suggestion, that we would just get rid of this. So, okay, compositionally, that would just work a little better. And go back up, notes. Nope, that one, this one. Number two. Oh yeah, number two. Deselect that. This is, which one can I draw on? That one. Okay. Messing around with layers. Okay, this is something that we have all done before. I say this because I've done this. That background horn can be the hardest thing to try to put in perspective with the foreground horn. In this case, these should be about symmetrical, or we, the viewer, would expect them to be symmetrical. And this one is curving here, but that one is curving there at that much of an angle, which means that this head has to be really tilted around to us, and we should be seeing the top of that head along with that shape. That's the shape between the two of those. And that would need to be carried down through the top of the dragon head for it to remain at that angle. Obviously, that's not what we have. Dragon head is completely sideways to us, so that back horn would be more like that. It's going to go up and disappear behind that other horn, and this one's going to do this, and that one's going to be like right behind it. More like that. So, there you go. That would help out. Keep that in mind as you're trying to align things in the z-axis that way. Yep. Number three. Oh yeah, colors. Okay. What was that one for? This scene is primarily greens and purples. Those are opposite colors, and that works well. Only the fact that we have basically blues and grays in here. And in a scene like this, it would be better just to keep that going so that anything in the shadows is going to start picking up the green of the surrounding. That is, white has no innate color of its own. So it will only have color depending on what its environment is. And this environment is green. So if it's not receiving direct, I would say daylight tinted, neutrally tinted light from the light source, then it's going to be picking up the green tone from the surrounding area. And that's what I'm trying to do here. Get rid of some of that gray and let all the shadow stuff start jumping over to the green. Again, if you're saying something to me live in the chat, then put swatches in the text somewhere so that it flags it for me. Otherwise, I assume you guys are just talking amongst yourself and I don't read them all as I'm going. So let's double down on the green, and then you might want to get that belt just to brighten up a little bit so it stands out. You could probably even push it further than that. I'm sort of easing into it, but keeping it away from the gray. Too much there. Yeah. Something a bit closer to that would be more accurate and bring more color back into it. We are losing quite a bit out here in this hand, so I would suggest brightening that up, and we need to do something to also bring the staff out. Maybe the staff is catching some of the green light in order for it to stand out, and that's fine. You can play a little artistic license and have that going on, or we can have a little of the, maybe there's some of this green mist, right? Or a bit of a brighter violet back there so that that can stand out more. Yeah. Just, trying to bring out those shapes a little bit. What else? For the hand. Yeah, the hand, I like the idea of the light on the hand. I think that's kind of cool. But it's just so little. It's just this one little thing. So can we see a bit more? Can it be something more substantial? Can he be casting a spray of guiding lights, maybe? That these things are maybe like showing them the way, And now it has a little motion in the scene where these things are, or maybe they're just little dots, but yet the further they go out, maybe they start turning into little dragony shapes that have, wings. And so he's summoning these magic dragon things. So, and they're doing that. And that would be kind of cool. Yeah, I'm just either get rid of it or do a little more with it. Yeah. The last thing is the eye. The eye. It's such a large focal point of the image, as it should be. But it is lacking a little visual information. Like once we get to the eye and we're looking at it, it's just green. So go take a look at, let's see if I have pose refs. Can't remember if I have it on here or not. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, these like different reptilian eyes. Now take a look at one of these guys, and you don't have to do it like verbatim, but take a look at some of the shapes that are in here. The different ways that the iris and the pupil form, these weird shapes. Humans have, circular pupils, but not all animals. Animals have all kinds of shapes of pupils. And also look at the way that the skin forms around the eye. This one up here seems very close to what you have, so you might look at that pattern and just, base it right off of something like that. That would bring a lot of believability to the image. So, get that sort of inspiration. Maybe it has like I need something that's not that. There we go. Maybe it has that sort of split pupil where it's like big on the top and then down here, and then has that, but it has like lines that lead into it. Just something that has a bit more interest to it. And we're also likely going to see a bit more of the flap here on the top, and the way that these play together, that we probably have like a fold going this way, and then a fold sort of folding into that way. Then we have a fold underneath that one. We probably have a fold coming like here. Then that fold goes on top of that. So you start layering these things, and it gives a bit more believability to how all this functions. And he can emote more with more parts of the skin being able to move around. So that alone would even just help a bit and make it feel like a real creature that has a bit more sentience to it. So, very good piece, Iona. One of the strongest pieces that I've seen come in the small view. The values, overall image construction, and simple color scheme work exceptionally well. Kayla is up next, if Photoshop will let me open it. There we go. Okay, very bright, positive scene, a lot of fun to look at. And let's step through it. I can't remember what all the points made were. Okay. These are just varying points in no particular order. Okay. Number one is this back wing. The wings look like they make sense arrangement-wise, unless you think about it three-dimensionally. So that's what we want to do. Vomu says, thank you so much. You are welcome, Vomu, though I don't know who you are. Did we just look at your artwork? I don't know what your handle is on. Isn't it? Yeah, YouTube automatically looks to see if it has my name in your comment, and will flag it. So yeah. Okay, now on this, we can think of Mr. Skywell here as being let's think of him as a cube, right? And we've kind of got this side, and we've got that side, and we're doing a cutaway. So once it gets to that side, we're going to go back up, and we're going to have the top. So Mr. Skywell has something of this shape, right? That's the volume. Now we have wing coming off here. Then that wing should be coming off there, right? On the back side, on the back side of him. And then it would go off about that much. Then it starts going back. So we're actually seeing this move in a decent amount because it's going to be hidden back behind. The only way that we could actually see the curve on this side is if it's coming out at that point. But that point over here would mean that this is connecting down here, like that. So one of these needs to move. I think it would be much easier and be more accurate to move the back one. So that's just something about, you know, thinking about the three-dimensionality of the creatures and aligning things so they make sense. So you're probably just going to have a little bit of that back there. Next up, number two is that this just isn't doing anything. It's like there's words down here, but it's not clear enough to read, and it's not giving us any more information about what this is, so I assume we just get rid of it. If you want to give a bit more feeling that this is a ship, something you could do is put the little, I don't know what they're called, I rarely am on a boat, but there's like wooden pegs that stick up, and you could have some, you know, ropes tied up like this, giving the idea that maybe she's on some sort of ship, right? And you have that's a terrible net, by the way. Those should connect all the way across. Yeah, so there you go. Something along that line would kind of give the idea that she's on a ship, if that's what you're trying to show. And you could just take that out and just leave that being some clouds back there. Next, number 3, the lighting. Okay, the lighting here is a little loose on accuracy, but one of the things that I would like to see just is that the underside of this is all in shadow. We're showing that this is going into shadow just by the purple area. Then the rest of this should not be receiving any direct bright sunlight. This should all be shaded. This is all in shadow. And that will make him feel less flat. He feels a bit flat right now because the underside is receiving just as much light as the top side, thereby not making any difference between the two of them. And the yellow could highlight or reflect light, not highlight, reflect light towards the green because it's blue coming from the sky, adding to the yellow of the golden color, and you can have a bit more of a green tone to the highlights. Yep. And we could probably even go deeper with some of this. A little bit. Yeah. Okay, that would be one way to do it. Another way is if we wanted to darken this whole thing up a little bit so that he's a bit more of a silhouette, then you could have the bright, blue behind him. If you want to do it kind of that way, and then he has and that's not even white. And then you can have the white, sunlight coming across that way. So there's different ways you can light him up if you wanted him to stand out a bit more. But at least shading the underside of the stuff would be a good start in playing with that. Number 4 is, no, where are you talking about 4? 5 is style. The style layer, I'm not sure. This guy feels like a very, very anime, very manga, sort of just a couple of tones that are flat, not really going for brushstroke painted realism, but yet this is more like a realistic approach. I don't know, did you use maybe like a photo in order to try to establish some of the clouds? So yeah, each one of these, he's kind of one style and the clouds are a different style, and her painting is a different style. None of the brush strokes and approach to rendering is really the same as any other part. So consider if you want to try to unify those into the same approach. I think that would work better. Another thing here is the glow. Instead of trying to give a fuzzy glow, that's a very simple way to try to do it. And it's the less effective way to do it. So go ahead and leave that the normal tones, and then just have, if you want it to feel brighter, then you make the inside of it white, and then you just use the super, saturated tones right along the edge of it, and it makes it feel like it's glowing that cyan color, where in actuality, most of it is actually white, and you just assume the color based on, okay, yes, I'm on brush again, thank you. Based on the color that is around it. Then also, if you want to give it the idea that it's glowing, make it have plenty of reflection, especially on the metal of that. Not a soft haze over it. That only happens if there's a lot of atmosphere and dust in the air. But let it have nice, pure reflection of that color. And because it is reflective metal, it can get pretty bright. And you're doing it pretty well over here too. So you could just even continue that a bit more if you wanted to make it feel like it was even, brighter than that. But that's up to you. Yeah, a couple of ideas there. Leonardo, I've got to go faster. I'm talking about too many other things. Okay, Leonardo with the giant ice giant. Yeah, it sounds like my computer's trying to back up and download something in the background. All right, so 5 points here, and another one kind of in no particular order. This background mountain is just kind of so perfectly curved and kind of follows the shape of this that I would rather see it just changed up a little bit. Maybe it doesn't have that perfect peak at the end, and finding maybe a different shape for that, so it doesn't just have that nice, perfect curve the way that ascends there. Number 2, this light, this warm light, kind of feels like it's going against what the scene is all about. You're saying, is it lagging? Let me check with OBS to see if it's giving me any issue. OBS is still giving me green, although YouTube is giving me red, so I don't know what's up with that. YouTube, it's saying it's having problem, but I don't know why, because I'm sending it fine from my side. Okay, so we have a very dark sort of scene, very cold, forbidding, but then we have this nice warm light coming in over this shoulder. So I think we either need to push with that further and sort of embrace that and let that be a bigger part of the image, or we might want to get rid of it and just let this be a cold, forbidding scene. And there's nothing wrong with that. In which case, we could just have, the dark sky going all the way back. And if you want to have some light coming across so that they are backlit, hey, no problem with that. Trying to give that lighter tone there. But it would be a bit more of an edge light, coming along this way, and not so much a haze light all the way across it. So the areas that are in shadow, well, they stay more in shadow. That it's being blocked by the light there, and maybe just the the top of that is catching a bit of the warmer light. So, yeah, think about that. I would say try to clarify that up a little bit. Next up, number 2 or 3, whatever. The metal. The metal here seems like, okay, it's the block in of metal, but honestly, it's so flat in tone that it comes off a bit more. It comes off a bit more plasticky or maybe rubbery. And I had these images that had wonderful little examples of metal. That's for the next point. But take a look at this. This right here, computer, thank you. If you would approach rendering it in this sort of direction, I think you would get a lot more out of that metal. It would actually feel colder because it would feel more metallic. And that would be good for your scene. So they're blocking it in with this darker tone, right? Somewhere around here, right? Not too far from what you have. And the shadowy areas are black. So again, kind of what you've got. But there's a pretty high jump up to the lit areas. I didn't pick up the right color. But the colors facing towards us that are on the apex of the curve towards us, so it'd be right along this line, we would be getting some light from that. Probably a bit more of the blue just since we're in that environment. Then we're getting a bit more light along the edges, like he has there. You're generally getting the light to show up along the edge, not so much in the creases area. This also shows a good indication of, adding scrapes and dents and that sort of thing. The edges aren't always perfect. Maybe there's big breaks in it. And also the color of, a little rust. It's similar to this color, actually. And throwing some rust on the helmet as well. You don't necessarily have to go overboard with it. You could do it like that. Maybe it has a bit more of a patina to it if you wanted to go towards the green side. And some of the highlights, though, it would highlight very bright, but in limited amounts. It's not really sharp. So there you go. I think that revisioning of the metal would be very helpful. Next, 3, 4. 4 is color. This whole guy feels just very gray when we could get a lot more color out of him. So we could just make a color layer and say that we get this, and then we turn on our brush settings somewhere. I'm going to turn on color dynamics. 7775. Okay, yep, good enough. And then let's say we grab this tone. His beard. Let's embrace some of these cold colors, right? And I'm going to set this down so it's like 60% perhaps. But yet for the skin, maybe it's a bit more of the violet. So every time I make a brush stroke, it's slightly changing the color of it. And then it's 60% opacity in changing the color of the layer underneath it. So he could feel much more icy. By using like the blues and stuff. And you could start doing it by regions a little bit. Maybe the joints are a bit more, violet. Fingers get a bit more violet. just to have some differences between them. Maybe the cheeks are a bit more blue or cyan. You know, it would take some while, but you could add that in there and it would add a lot more color and make him actually feel colder and just steps away from everything having to be so gray. Okay, next up is like skin. The skin here is fairly taut, normal, but think about maybe pushing it slightly towards what you might think of as a White Walker, you know, Game of Thrones, where it's, you come in here and it just has all these wrinkles. The skin it's like it's been frozen, and it's got all of this going on, and it's no longer taut. It's kind of prune-like and frozen, and it's got, you know, cracks and tension across it. And the hair too is no longer like this. Is very clean, kept, look like it's been brushed. And we want to break it up. This is a wild giant beard. So maybe finding something a bit harsher than that. And letting that So yeah, just kind of roughing that up a little bit, adding some more color to it, trying to give some more texture to the skin. I mean, you could even over texture the skin. So the whole thing is just very wrinkly and taut. Yeah, so there you go. That's it for now. Leonardo, overall, I like this piece a lot. And, oh, I think that I have one more thing I was going to talk about. Oh yeah, I like the cape here. The cape is very, very straight out. So it just has this whoop, and you might get that, but it's unlikely. What you can usually think of is a series of waves is how it goes. It would be doing something more like that, and the edge is going to be doing a similar sort of thing. So, like if you have a straight piece of fabric, like say we have a flag, top of flagpole, flag here. The flag is going to have a circle. You can go look at animation. Animation approaches it like this. A circle moves along the top of the flag. So, you know, in frame one, it's like that. And then the circle moves over a little bit. And then it's like that. And then it's like that. Right? So it goes from like this end to over, and then over more, and then over more. And the dip travels down the fabric. Then another dip starts behind it. And so that's when you get this wave pattern. And you know, and of course, the bottom follows it too, the same wave pattern. And it usually is not perfect like this. It's going to be like angled down the fabric. And so same sort of way, there's a dip here and a dip out there and a smaller dip that's forming and a smaller dip that's forming. And the same way here. There's more catching up here, so a big dip, and that's throwing that part off, and then that part's having to compensate, and that part's having to compensate. And it starts doing it all the way down. So, there. I don't know why I need to delete that. I can just close it. There we go. Martin. Open. Yeah, so a decent amount of change from the first one, because I remember we had a centaur and we had a big city in the background. And we've gone with this, and I'm completely happy with this. This is a beautiful scene. It's well rendered. It's well conceived. I love your tree-ish things back here. Wonderful shape to your big elemental. This guy has fun shapes on him. The strength of the lighting is really cool. So yeah. Now let's talk about a couple of things maybe we could improve, or a couple of issues that are sticky. I need something that'll show up. Okay. Number one is just a little tangent where this is running right into the point of his arm. So it looks a little odd. Probably just having that a little bit bigger so those just overlap, and it has a clear overlap between the two of those. A little simple solution there, but that would be needed. Number two is this seems, it's so slim and small up here that I don't know that we even really need it. Either get rid of it or give us a bit more so it's just not this one little thin dark line. Either make it, something that's a bit more sizable. And maybe we have some of the vines, doing a bit more of that sort of thing so we can obviously see that it's there, or get rid of it. Yeah. Number three is the pillar. And you got this massive, natural arch ring thing. But this is super far away from us. And this is way closer to us. And they're really not that big of a difference visually. So I'm thinking, and that also is a weird tangent with the way that runs right into his arm. So this thing could really be beefed up so that it's much fatter. It needs to be doubled to tripled in size to be anywhere near the size, perspective-wise, to the size it should be over there by the time it gets there. So that needs to be way thicker. You can kind of see how that would fill out. Then once it gets over there, it'd be more to that size. Number four. We've got plenty of space here, and I don't really see any reason why we wouldn't want to go ahead and get this guy a little bigger. He's a cool guy. He's well rendered, and why not? We could deal with having more of this guy in the scene. The big guy in the background is plenty big, and we're not losing too much of him to do this. So I would just assume get more of him in the scene. There you go. Something like that. Yeah, we still aren't losing anything. Yeah. I just feel like that's a better use of the space. I mean, maybe you don't want to go quite that big. Maybe you want to half the difference. But I still think halving the difference would be better than him being so small. Let's go ahead and connect with this guy. He's pretty cool. Was there anything else for 5? Oh, on the thing on the background, the arch thing, we've got a lot of vegetation out here, and we could see a little bit of the vegetation going up the arch, and it also might be interesting to have vegetation kind of going on the top, and maybe there's vine stuff hanging down from it. And I feel like that would just be something that would fit in whatever the world is that you've made here. And then it would have maybe some of the vegetation kind of doing this sort of thing. Yeah. There we go. Okay, enough on that, Martin. Beautiful scene. I like it. And I look forward to seeing maybe if you just make a couple of tweaks and what you get out of it. This one is by Matt Oates. A wonderful sky captain with the sky will. And he was concerned with having him hold the pistol, that they would look like enemies, but I don't really see that. I just feel like he happened to notice a whale coming by while he's flying his ship. So, yeah, I'm fine with it. You could replace it. He mentioned like maybe replacing it with a smoking pipe, and that would be fine too if it concerns enough. Timmy, yeah, hey man, how's it going? What was the points here? Oh yeah, okay. Number one is I put a number one there. Why did I put the number one there? Sometimes you make notes and you're not even sure exactly why. The anatomy feels like it's a little off on this guy, or you might want to clarify it a little bit. His eye seems a little small to the head, so I'm thinking you might want to make it a bit bigger, somewhere along that line. And number two, his neck feels really flat. These are smaller things, obviously. Most of this image is very successful, so I'm not going to go over that. Perhaps if we have just a bit more of the jaw before we have that neck bend, that would feel like he's not just, all neck, and that he's got a little twist there. Very small thing, but it's something that kind of bothered me. The next one is, he seems a little flamboyant, and maybe even a slightly bigger hat would work for this guy. Something that a bit more fantasy to it. A nice size to it. And he's got some wonderful gold on this, a gold trim, along the outside of his hat, or some sort of gold thing along here. That would fit on this sort of hat, and would keep it from just being this dark mass. Number three. Number four is the lighting. Yeah, the lighting is a little kind of all over the place, and I'm thinking he could easily, like, we've got the lighting coming down on this well, and that shows up. It shows up well. Yeah, I didn't mean to make a pun, but there you go. What if he was pointing off the same distance the whales are moving, pointing his blunderbuss? No, I don't think this is necessarily, they're not necessarily allies. This is just a guy that's like stopped to look at some birds, the way we do. We just, we just are doing our things, and we turn to kind of look at a sound, and yeah, just being interrupted. That's all. Okay, so with him, consider getting him in a different color scheme than the background. We've got all of this bright color back here, and we've also got some pretty bright colors up here, but everything's all blues and all warms and kind of just everywhere. And I'm thinking maybe he's more in shadow, and then the background can be lighter, and you can sort of separate the two that way. Or if the light is coming down this direction, then we would be getting a bit more of shadow over the face. Sorry, I was trying to read one of the comments. We might be getting more of the shadow from the hat. If the light's coming down from the top, then the hat would be doing what hats are designed to do, which is shade the face. So it could be a bit more of that direction, or if that, depending on what direction the light's coming, it might be doing more like that. Otherwise, maybe the whole head is a bit more in shadow. So consider where you want to go with that direction. This is another thing, is we're obviously looking up at this fellow. Up. We're looking up at this, but yet we're looking down at the belt. So we need that curved to also have us looking up at the belt. More of this. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. This feather isn't doing a lot for me. I think you could probably just clarify some of these shapes and get more out of it than having that feather. Unless you maybe want to put the feather more over here. But having it right on the end, it just isn't real great spot for it right there. We get more out of it by moving it over. The dark shapes here is kind of bucking the system that we've already established. Like, this is very bright back here. And I think you would just gain more by simplifying that and having this to go darker. Yeah. Okay, that's about all I'm pulling at the moment, Matt. It's a beautiful image. I don't think it needs all that much work. And I appreciate you sending it in. Honestly, great group of images. The well, exceptionally good render on that. Very imaginative. And I appreciate you seeing it. Matt Woodcock. Open. Here we go. Okay, 4 points, Matt. Number 1 is lighting. You are overblowing the scene exposure-wise. It's super bright. And you're having that and practically black shadows and no midtones. And one thing to know is that blue skies are often very blue. They are usually darker than you would ever expect that they are. So we want to push that beautiful blue sky. And you will actually get more of a sense of lighting by adding these colors back in here and adding the contrast between these colors than just by trying to make everything really light. Thanks, Clint. I'll definitely do a bit more. I'm off to Germany tomorrow and off to bed tonight. Well, good night, Matt. Thanks for being able to join, and thanks for sending in the image. So I'm going to get some of that color in there. We'll probably get a little kind of violet tone in the shadows of the clouds. And then this guy, I'm not sure exactly what color this dragon is. He's almost so washed out that I'm not sure. It looks like he's a bit more purple. But yeah, we need to really step some of these colors back into it and bring that color to the scene. Look at blue skies and see how bright those are. And like this gold stuff, if it's going to be in shadow, even if it's quite a ways away, if it's being that big, I mean, just imagine like a 747 flying over top of you. It's going to get really dark compared to that sky. And yeah, we need to put that in there. Number 2, let's put that on top so I can see it. Number 2 is perspective. We've got like a perspective thing going on with the staff here, where it's not really following the perspective. This is just kind of flat onto us, where the perspective says that it should be getting smaller at a steady rate, like if it was on a flat plane. It needs to be getting smaller. Like the top of that needs to be doing this sort of thing, and then that's getting much bigger as it's coming down, right? Bit more of that. Okay, number 3, I'm not sure why he has metal around him. I don't know if you're trying to play off of that thing, but it's just weird. It's like there's big metal rings around him, and it's, yeah. So, I mean, we kind of have the connotation between this staff thing, this scepter, and that metal on the dragon. I would say get rid of these. It's kind of weird. I'm not entirely sure what the underside of a dragon head looks like, but I'm going to suggest looking at references like can you find a bottom view of a reptile or a snake or a T-Rex model and see what the underside is? Because I bet there's more interesting information than that. And if this is a dragon, then usually their horns like go the other way, unless these are tusks. And if they're tusks, they probably, try to go up a little bit. So yeah, that's something you need to revisit because there's a lot of attention going on that head. And there's just some odd shapes, and anatomically there's not much visual information to look at. Okay, another thing. Yeah, there's so much light in this scene, and it's not a spotlight, it's just skylight. So the shadows shouldn't be that dark. I mean, they can be dark compared to the light, but still, they're not going to be black. Black is where there's just absolutely no way that any light can bounce off of anything and make it to that spot. And that's not what we have here. We have plenty of skylight. It's like any of this stuff here is going to be lit by the sky, and it's going to start getting very cool in tone. And that fill light from the sky is going to take out a lot of those shadows. Now, it would get darker up underneath the hat because it's not much light to bounce up and lighten the underside of the hat back in the corners. But, yeah. Number 5, the wings. You have the wings coming forwards. And really, birds would only do that, or flying creatures only really have the wings coming forwards like that if they're about to land and they're actually throwing their wings out this way to create a gust of wind to slow them down. Otherwise, it really doesn't have much of a forward, or if it has any, it would fold backwards the other way. So think about what's going on with that. Okay, that's it for now. I've really got to go faster because my brain's already getting tired and I'm not going to be able to keep going too long. Mamet. Okay, Mamet, I think you got really carried away and doing a lot of little stuff and forgot this thing called clarity. So that's really what we need to bring back, is clarity of what we're looking at, clarity between objects and planes of the image, instead of just putting lots of lines and noodly things all over the image. One is values. Talk about that and then talk about this. Yeah, okay. So It's a night scene, that's fine, but night doesn't, as I've said before, night doesn't necessarily mean black. And you can easily grab another color, such as blue, or somewhere in the violet range, right? So I could grab something like this, and that could be the sky. And you can accept that as night sky. So I'm not even sure where some of the shapes are here. Especially if you throw some stars up in here. No. Give me some stars. I'd be like, yeah, that's night sky. Sure. And maybe it gets a little darker down there if you want. And then also ground is generally, the horizon is generally black against the night sky. So we could just have that go black there. And you can bring in some different colors. Like if you want some little violets or something along the edge, that's fine. And what we're trying to do is bring out the shape of this thing and bring some of the color back in. And here, yeah, you just have this gold everywhere, and it's to the point where more is not necessarily better. And if everything has it, then there's nothing unique. And that's one of those cases we actually want to pull back a little bit, or at least find a way that some parts of it show more than other parts. We've got a lot of detailing going on down in scales and stuff instead of on the big main creature in the middle of the scene. I'm still not sure what this head is. I don't know if it's wood or carved or stone or flesh, or it's just two yellow eyes, what I take for eyes. So let's make sure that we're putting the attention on the focal points and not necessarily on doing on this little stuff. If we're going to have a fire, and that's going to be a prominent, bright thing in the scene, then we need to really play that up. Stuff facing the fire, orange, like being a little gutsy about it. Push it. Don't be afraid of the color. Color is going to help you here. It's really going to sell this. Anything facing the fire is going to be brighter. Anything else is going to have the moonlight on it. Marco Bushi. This wouldn't be a bad thing to look up. Look up his videos. Marco Bushi. He has some excellent YouTube videos. He does excellent work with color and doing concepts for color scripts for animation movies. So go take a look at his stuff and see about how to add color back into scenes that have a tendency to get washed out, and how to use things like firelight in order to help bring a lot of depth and emotion and color into a scene, and how to use it to bring about more form in the different stuff you're doing. It would take me a long time. You would just need to go piece by piece, and like things that are lit by the fire needs to be very warm. Things that are not needs to have the light from the cool moonlight and starlight coming down on them, and develop that more. Find a way to clarify what this creature is and what's going on with this. Another thing is, I feel like he's right here by the fire. I feel like he's a couple of feet away from this fire and just looking down on it. But yet you have these birds right here. So it's like you're trying to indicate that there's a lot of distance between the two, but there's nothing else to give me that idea. I almost need to see mountain ranges in between these guys in order to make me feel like he's as big and as far away as you're trying to indicate. So some big questions that you got to look at. I don't know exactly how you want to resolve them because there are a lot of different ways to try to go about it. All right, Mikawai. Another really simple piece. Again, don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. Simple piece fulfills what we're talking about from the brief, and it works well, just values and colors from that, but how can we also improve it? So 5 points. Number one is oh, I put 1 and 4 here. All right, anyway, we're going to talk about the wizard dude first. Right now, he's getting a little lost. That his white hair is running into the background, and it's getting a little lost back there. So either he can be here, fully inside the shape of this dude, or let's have him obviously outside, and he's not right in line with these things, but he's breaking from them a good deal so that his shape is prominent enough that it stands out from the background. So that's kind of what I'm saying here, like here or here for that guy would be a little bit better, unless you change the shape of old dragon face here in the background. All right, number 2 is the execution of, oh, I remember why I have 4 right there. Okay, we'll go back and talk about that. The execution of this thing, I feel like it's the idea of a dragon creature, but that's it. There's not any visual interest. There's really no form. It feels very flat. So what can we do with it? And I remembered some wonderful pieces that I saved from the newest God of War game. Like this, the world dragon, the world snake, that's what it was. Beautiful rendition of the world snake. And there are various concepts. I wonder if I can make this smaller. No, doesn't want me to make it smaller. All right. So go out there and take a look at some of these guys. And get ideas about how you can add more to this creature, flesh it out, make it feel like a real thing, give it some different shapes and textures and different folds of the skin, and these are all excellent things that you could add to your particular creature. I grabbed one of them and I overlaid it at lower opacity, and you get something like that. Now that really would elevate it. Now all of a sudden this thing is way more lifelike, and it has visual interest, and I'd probably even brighten up the top of that a little bit right there. Now it has a bit more form, and you can see the difference. Like, one is the idea of a thing. This feels like the thing is there. Like it's believable. It has a realism to it. And what I got cropped off was like, little bits like this hanging down would even be good. Just kind of breaking that up, feeling that like it's not just this perfect shape. Maybe it has these little other frawny things that hang off of it. So that direction would be excellent. Same sort of thing here. He feels like the idea of a wizard, but now we need to go get some photos, and we need to push him a bit further. Things like the folds here is one of the major things that's going to sell the realism on this guy. And if this is really coming down, like somewhere here is his elbow, right? Somewhere along this line, which means that this needs to be folding up around right? And it's going to be doing that sort of thing. It's going to be hanging between those, right? Creating that sort of pattern, and that's going to hang down practically the whole way. Maybe a lot of wizards have very long sleeves. Maybe you do that sort of thing. Change it up a little bit. His whole face could be a bit darker, like the skin isn't as dark as the white hair. So it's a mid-tone, somewhere in here. Or maybe the hair is a bit imperfect, or maybe it's being blown a little bit by some little breeze. It's not hanging perfectly around. Got some little fringe stuff hanging down. These little fold differences, discrepancies with the hair. The only thing really emitting light is this thing, so you might push its color up a little bit. Yeah, so yeah, I would go with that direction on it. And number 3 and 5. Number 3 is down here in the water. We probably have, you could see a little bit sharper of the water along the edge there, or the difference between that and maybe the backside of whatever this lake thing is. It would be softened a bit by whatever this fog is, or ever how much fog you have. But I'm just bringing a little more clarity to this, and we can have a little water texture across there. And it's nice that we can have some pockets of spot. If that fog isn't in the way, we can actually make out some of the shapes of rocks in various places, or trees, or whatever is back there. But then wherever the fog hits, and this is going from general fog fuzziness to this is purposely placed in here, and I'm accounting for it. Same sort of thing back here. Like, okay, I'm not just having fuzziness, like this fog has a shape. And I'm saying that this is the shape of that fog. And I'm also saying that there's dark, low clouds up here. And they're obscuring the top of that. Yeah. So, yeah, okay, just taking it further that way, really realizing it, and looking at your references, bringing in more inspiration from real life, and those little cues of pushing it here and there, adding a bit more realism to it, would step this piece up and be a beautiful, calm, engaging image. So, and it's all based and works because of the solid composition, the solid simple values and colors that you're working with. Oh, yep. Nick Marandola. Hey Clint, didn't get a chance to finish it, but wanted to submit it anyways. Okay. So I don't know what you would or wouldn't have done, so I've just got to mention a couple of things. Number 1 is the lighting really isn't established. I don't know where the light is on this scene, so that sort of needs to be decided. And whatever it is needs to be embraced a little more. I feel like you're going the realistic side, so I'm going to be judging it towards that direction. I would say you're trying to go for like an upwards light kind of coming down on the scene. Right now, a lot of this is fairly flat, so let's get a bit more volume and reflect that sort of lighting, situation with it. And that's what it needs to apply to all of this, because whether it's his, is it greaves that's along the shin? Or whether it's his chest or whether it's helm, it's all receiving the same sort of flat light. And we need to get more definition. Number 2 is, this is similar to the other one. The values are just very the same through a lot of this, and we could add a bit of atmosphere to the scene by adding some value difference between the two planes. There was a decent amount between like him and some of the stuff behind him, but like this rock could be a little bit darker. And just try to give a little atmosphere along the bottom. The top, you do want a bit more of the wider values so that he stands out and we get more detail out of him. But adding like a little fog atmo along the bottom would be nice. Next up, number 3. This is a small thing, but one of the things I try to do during the live streams is just mention things that I haven't mentioned before. And there's always more things that I could mention that I don't mention. It's like, oh, well, why didn't you mention that? Because I have 19 images to go over, not 2. If I could fill the whole time just talking about 1 or 2 images and do full painters over it, but that we don't have just 1 or 2 images. And that is that the way that you hold a sword, it's more likely that the sword would be tilted the other way. So instead of like this, that it would be tilted so that we're actually seeing the underside, what you'd say, quote, underside of the blade. It's not really an underside and a top side. But we would be seeing the underside compared to the way that we see it now. Just with the way that you would hold the cross guard, I don't see that it would tilt downwards to you like this. It seems like it would be more like that. And the blade might look skinnier because of that. But, yeah, something to think about. And like he's doing here, right? It's going along that axis of his hand. If it was along that axis with this hand, it would almost be just flat to our view. The blade would be very thin along that way. Oh, I was on that layer. Hang on. Number 4. Number 4 is very similar to what we saw on the other one, which is the alignment. We've got this angle with the body, and the head pretty much follows the same angle. And the horn needs to follow the same angle. So here, this horn is going down and up to this point. This horn needs to come down and then up back to that same height. So that horn needs to be somewhere back there and not that far down. Yeah. It's just one of those things that kind of gets me off. It sort of annoys me. It jumps out at me when I see it. So I've got to say something about it. That also makes a sort of weird tangent with it going behind there like that. You could consider just breaking that by putting like a spike on the top of this. Then that way you wouldn't have to worry about how that back piece goes behind it, because this is going all the way off the page anyway. So, I mean, that's one of the little solutions you could give to it. Number 5 has to do with his shape, that he's got this nice shape over most of his body because he's so dark. And yeah, you can assume that horns are asymmetrical, but unless it's obviously asymmetrical, you just assume that the artist drew it wrong. And that's how most people are going to take it. unless it's like this, and then this one has some weird, thing like that, or this one automatically curves down, or it obviously turns up. Yeah, it has to be very clear. Here, in order just to make the most out of this guy's silhouette, you probably go ahead and just make these dark. Maybe they're covered in metal. Maybe they've been painted. Maybe they're just black horns to begin with. But that would complete his dark shape and silhouette better than leaving them light. Because the light ones, they sort of just get lost in the guy behind him. Yeah. This is also a place where you could consider some of these things. Like I was talking about the atmosphere down here, similar to this, where we sing on this Kong concept art. You could also treat the background guy more like this, where he's almost all silhouette shadow being backlit. Backlighting these guys are also a good option. And it's just in the lit areas that you really see any detail. On the rest of this, he's almost all shadowed. That would work well. This is a good example of a similar color scheme. And you see here that it's really, again, only the things in the light that you get any detail of, but once it gets in the shadow, it basically flattens out. Interesting way that light works in that case. I'm not sure how to say your name. Nuahat. Nuhat. Madaway. Maybe I'll just call you Madaway. I feel like I have a better chance of saying that more accurate. Okay. I don't remember seeing the sketch from this, so I assume that you didn't send it in. And a very different scene, more action, but it has the basics of what we're talking about, which is humanoid, foreground, and attack vehicle thing in the background. So, what are some things about this? Number one is the ship. This is three-dimensional. It's got depth. It's got interest to it. The ship is very flat. The ship is like completely flat to our view, and that seems really weird. So it feels like it's flying sideways. Maybe you're like, oh, we're looking at the bottom of it. But if we're looking at the bottom of it, then we're not seeing her in the right perspective. So I'm going to suggest that's one of the biggest changes you need to make is this ship. And also the fact that this ship is not big enough. Like, let's fill the frame with this ship. This big sucker. Make it look huge. And how could we do that? Well, you could use something like this, right? I just went out and I Googled for like sci-fi ship or drop ship or something along that line. Let me brighten it up so you can see a little bit more. So I just borrowed it something. I'm not saying use this. I'm saying you can go out there and find some ships that have already a very similar perspective to them, and that can help you sketch in your own ship in the same perspective. You can borrow the perspective. Also, just looking at this, you can start maybe thinking, okay, well, that's kind of cool, but I really wanted like a slimmer front on it, so I would take off that thing, and then I think I would have like a bay door on the side of it, and I'm going to have some guys jumping out of the bay door, so maybe you see some guys standing on the inside of this. I don't really like that engine thing. I want to put a bunch of like missiles and stuff over here. But it gives you a starting point, a really good starting point, in order to figure out what you want in your scene. Or if you can find similar ones and similar, perspectives and views, then, start trying to mash a couple of different ships together. And maybe you can find a design that you like. But that would really elevate the scene, is if you could bring it up to more of the level that you already have her at. So, what next? Number two, you've got this odd sort of beam thing going here and then a beam going here. And it just splits the scene in a sort of weird way. So this seems, it's almost like she's pretty good, but this is almost distracting. Just having that clean line right along her. It would be more, I think it'd be better if it was like here and it was kind of going behind her arm and it was maybe blasting, that a section next to her. And you could even have one here. But having it go right along the axis of her body is kind of odd. So consider adjusting that. And we probably take this one out. You do have this nice composition from here, which is, you've already started a nice compositional element with, my computer's lagging. There we go. I don't know if I live streamed that or not because my computer just started really lagging in Photoshop. And I don't know what it was trying to do. Smudge something, I think. Anyway. Okay, we were looking at, you already established a nice sort of triangular shape here with the ship going this direction and this thing going that direction, and she's right up there in the middle. That works fine. That one doesn't necessarily help it all that much, but that still sort of keeps it going that direction. So I would just, lean into that. Next up is just her design and sort of her function, that this looks like a military operation, but she has no weaponry. So I would want to see, she have some sort of gun here. Does she have a rifle on her back? Does she have some sort of weapon on her hip? Does she have a lightsaber, laser sword of some kind here? Make it feel like she's going to be part of this assault, whatever is going on. Otherwise, she's just an unarmed person riding on the top of a ship in the middle of a warfare, which seems a little odd. So, okay. Well, those are some ideas. I look forward to seeing what you can do with it. The whole thing has a great action to it, and I look forward to seeing how you ramp it up. Sebastian. All right, I remember the giant fish. I like the giant fish. I like he's just very fishy. He's just out there flying away, having a good time. Got like the sky pirate ships. I don't know if they're just having to go the same direction, or I don't know if I can't imagine them trying to capture that thing. But what are some ideas here? Number one is the bow piece of wood. I'm sure that this particular thing has a name. I'm going to call it the bow. And it's just a spike going out there, which is really plain and not completely believable. So I looked it up, and here is some images of ships. Like this is just, it's usually just regular and round. And then it has ropes tied to the end of it. This is a really good example that they actually, it's functional, that there are chains and ropes attached here, and it helps support other things, and it has like a little cap on the end of it. And, it has the rings, and each ring, they can attach something to these rings. Those are all good ideas. So, you make it part of the function of the ship, that you have that, and maybe it has like some ropes coming down here. If you don't want to have a rope, coming right down this part of the image, then maybe you just have it along the bottom. And again, having it basically the same size all the way out instead of a point. And then it can have rings, and it can have little rings off of that ring, so that other things can be connected to it if and when they need that to happen. And that would bring a bit more believability, authenticity to the way that this functions. And you can do a similar thing here, like it would have, maybe there's a net, on the front of these for some reason. and those tie up at the front of it. Yeah. Next up, number 2 is the light on the guy. It's getting a little washed out here, and this is another one where Marco Bucci, talking about some of the colors, in his stuff, and that this skin tone is getting very washed out. We could bring some skin tone back into this. Things like the ear especially can be warmed up, and the nose, and the hand could be warmed up. Now I'm thinking if he's a pirate dude, then he's probably been out in the sun a lot, and he could be pretty golden brown. I was out in Kauai for a while. Tell you what, you spend a lot of time out in the sun, especially if you're the right, ethnicity, and you can get super, super tan, super golden brown, and that's what I'd be looking out for this guy, really bringing in some of those beautiful golden and pink hues. You can feel that color coming back into it, right? He's not just so washed out. Then when you get into the higher values, then you can start using a bit more of the yellows, similar colors, and it's not going to just be without color. You can stair-step your way through some of these, and it feels like it's getting warmer and not colder. See? Maybe even push it a little further. So, kind of along that lines, and areas where it is getting reflection from the warm shirt, be getting even extra warm. Or you could also have it easily moving into the violet tones in anything that is in the shadow. Like maybe this part, instead of getting necessarily too much darker, that it just starts getting cooler. And you're still able to keep plenty of color. I feel like you're trying to go into some of that down here. And, part of your mind will say, well, I can't paint that in blues and violets because it's an orange pant. You can if you step into it correctly. And the viewer will buy that it's still orange if you lead them into it. And you have to also keep it consistent across the rest of the content. Like, the rest of this has to be blue as well, right? Now, it's neutral to begin with, so it's actually going to be more blue than that was. But see there, how much more color and pop that we can kind of get out of that. And also fits this scene. This is a very colorful scene, so it makes sense that would be that way. And same thing with these back here. Like towards the horizon, you can often see that it gets a bit more green. You can use a bit more color in the clouds too. Yeah, so just punching some of that back up, adding some of that color back into it. I have not seen the comment change in quite a while. It is still showing that it's streaming, but I have not seen the chat change in a while. So I'm probably missing your comments. Usually if it starts lagging, then the chat will stop working. On my side, it won't keep updating. So I'm trying to see if I can get it to... I don't want to restart the page, otherwise I'll lose the stream, I think. So yeah, I might just be not getting your comments. So, okay. Yeah, okay, that's it for Sebastian. Overall, I love your piece. It's very fun. It's very storybook. I'd say lean into that with the colors and just the overall sense of adventure. Yeah, enjoy it. Enjoy it. You got a good thing here. All right. Oh, so it is working. All right. You guys just weren't saying anything. That's fine. I know that sometimes it's frozen before, and I miss out on trying to keep up. All right. This is Travis Earls. Okay. I remember your original, and the gist is the same, but you've modified some stuff. I talked about either really adjusting the design of the creature to make it take up more of the horizontal frame, or making it more vertical and play up the height of everything. And this was the original. So yeah, we had a very horizontal. On this one, points are, number one, you're starting to paint this thing very realistic, but I still don't feel like you've decided where the light necessarily is coming from, or why. So that really needs to be answered, and I don't think you've really answered it yet. Try, instead of before you get into like doing super high detail on one area or two areas, that you start developing a sense of light over the whole thing. Do like a basic lighting pass, or just do a multiply layer and do a shadow pass. Either, work up in value or down in values based on, your starting value, and paint in the light pattern or paint in the shadow pattern, and see if that's working before you just jump into all the detail. Okay. Number 2, Max Ref. Okay, yeah. There's a fella, I saw this and immediately made me think of this fella. I'm not sure how you say his last name. Varin? But this guy, Max Varin, is how I'll say it. But I recently saw this image that he did of this character with all these guts and stuff. And you might want to go take a look at his stuff. He has videos, no commentary videos, but it shows a video recording of his painting process, and you might get some ideas about how to go about painting this sort of thing. And this is some more of his stuff. Obviously, really nice work, very similar to a lot of the textures in dark organics that you're trying to do. And he has organic brush sets that you can go out and purchase if you're interested in doing more of this sort of thing. This is it. He got somehow he made that little brush, and he can use it to create a series of folds or a series of bumpy textures. He used that one in order to help paint the hand, and he did that shape, and then he turned it into fingers. So it's photos that he has taken of different things that he got from the meat market, right? Just like a liver, and then taking photos of a liver, taking photos of some intestines, and then he makes a Photoshop brush out of it. So that might be something you want to experiment. And yeah, it's not like the golden ticket or the silver bullet to, you know, solve all your problems, but it might give you a starting point to start working with. And his stuff costs like $5 or $10. I mean, it's not that expensive. So that's out on CubeBrush. Go to cubebrush.co if you're interested in taking a look at his stuff. So yeah, I was just going to mention that. And number 3, redesign. You redesigned this fella. I remember thinking that this guy was really good. And the only thing I had with this was that if you did a vertical layout, we needed to change the weapon because it wasn't going to fit on a vertical layout. I thought this guy was super solid. I don't really see any reason why you needed to change him. But now that you have, it feels like a bit more all over the place than this one was. This one worked better because the black and the white and just a little gold. This one has black and gold and white pieces and the red intestines and brown leather, and it's a bit too broad. Can we simplify it? And that also goes into the lighting where, what's the color of the scene here? I don't know. And that should be modifying what is going on. This is, I take it, shiny metallic, but shiny metallic has to take its colors and its reflections based on the things around it, and you've not yet decided what that is. So the moment that you start deciding what color all of this is, you're going to have to change that. So that's one of the reasons you got to block in and know some of the lighting situation before you start rendering stuff, because some stuff is very dependent on that. Also, if this is a very green scene, then he needs to be tinted by the green light. It's green light that's shining on him. Therefore, the reds are all going to be muted towards the green side, right? Unless there's some other light source, but you haven't really established that. The next is the style. You have like a gritty kind of line-based style, at least in this block end, and kind of on this guy, but then you're taking it into being this very realistic muscles and tissue, and there's nothing really stylized about it, and that's fine, but that's going to be very slow to paint, and you're going to need to make sure that you carry that over everything. So I mean, if that's not the style you like to work in, that's not the style you have to work in. That's something just to keep in mind. Number 5 is the legs. These legs, just as soon as they get to here, it's just brown. It's like cowboy chaps. There's really no information there. I don't know what I'm looking at. If you do continue working with it, the bottoms of these aren't bad. Like it has the massive, guards along the bottom of the legs with the teeth sticking up. I mean, that would work fine. I mean, you could adapt that sort of thing over here too as well, and that would work well. So yeah, there we go. Just trying to find a bit more, understand what your lighting is. Go look at some images that have similar lighting as to what you want. Understand where the lighting is coming from, what color it is, and what intensity it is. And then keep that in mind as you're starting to paint through the detail stuff. So, yeah. James says, intestine brush. Who would have thought? Yeah, I know, right? But that fella Max, he paints a lot of that sort of stuff. So it makes sense that he would be the one that would start selling brushes off of that. And I did buy a pack of them because I was curious how they worked. And you got to play with them a bit. Learn how you can either try to bring lights out of them or paint them in as shadows. It's not going to just be like instantly, boom, you've got what you want. You've got to play with its settings and be able to kind of massage it into what you're doing. And you're likely going to have to start using multiple of them and kind of layering them on top of each other. So there's not just like one spot that has this very accurate, detail to it, and this other part that just has very simple painted stuff. If you do it, you kind of need to do it everywhere so it's consistent. Last one up, but not the least by any means, William Hallett. He shared this one out in multiple iterations on the Facebook group, which if you haven't joined, go to swatches.group, www.swatches.group, and it will send you right over to the Facebook group. We've got over 1,600 members at this time, so feel free to go out there and you can post your images, get some feedback, especially if you're doing the challenges. People will try to help you out and give you some ideas. Okay. A beautiful piece. It's been a beautiful piece all the way along the process, William. And I love seeing you send it in. So, number one is canvas. This is very similar to that one of the first pieces that we looked at, where the top part of this image really isn't doing anything for us. And it would help actually bring the tension down on them if you were to get rid of the top part of this. And it would just put them more towards the center of the frame. And yeah, I would crop off the top of it a little bit, make it even more horizontal, a bit more of the 1920, 1080 picture ratio, movie picture ratio. Number two, this is getting exceedingly dark for such a positive light image. And I don't think we necessarily need to go that dark. I can understand back underneath this cloak a little bit. But as far as this stuff, you can just let it basically be the same all the way down. I mean, you can just have, just have this sort of tone. You have a little bit of this blue light. Let that play off of these a little bit. That wouldn't mean that this background would need to be lightened up some so it shows up, but that's hardly a big change. So I would just keep that top part of this cloak from getting quite so dark. And then maybe the inside of that one a little bit. And then as it goes underneath there, that can get a bit darker. Okay, I didn't put it in my notes, but another thing is she seems very small-waisted. So that her hip has to be about here. And then we go from neck to hip pretty quickly. We should have like one head length down to the breast line, and then one down to the navel, and then one down to the crotch, and this should be joining in somewhere in that region. Like it's going to be more down here because we got some room between the navel and then the hips starting, and that also right now is making this arm look a little too short. Makes both these arms look a little too short. So we either need to add more canvas and stretch this out, or you're fine with just stretching it out, or I don't know. Okay, there we go. Or her upper body needs to be stretched out some. You just get this section. Let's see. I'm going to do this real rough and tumble way. Let's grab all the upper stuff here for a second. Copy, paste. I think you're still trying to keep her more of a child, and maybe you're giving her a bit squat proportions, but even still, it's a bit much. It's bordering on like midget proportions. So if we were to just pull that out a bit, and then we can move. Nope, that's not what I need. There. So there, we can see the difference, right? Yeah. That feels a bit more right. You see, her arm doesn't feel like it's so squat when you do it that way. Pull in a little bit. Yeah. I would be going with that. And maybe you don't really need to even take off much on the top if you pull that up some. Next up is number 3. Oh, if you don't make any of those changes, then you've got this odd tangent where I need to do it later. There we go. Art of the Viscerals. Thank you so much. As always, I definitely plan on finishing this piece. I'm so mad I couldn't present a finished piece today. If you don't mind, guys, I don't know what your actual name is. So, like, Art of the Viscerals, I don't know who you are. You gotta put that in the chat. I don't know whose image or which image you're talking about. You have this background mountain whose angle is like coming right down to that hair and meeting at the end, and then it comes over here and the shadow is meeting right in with the lacy bit right there. So the mountain probably needs to extend past the hair, but it needs to be like a different angle so it's not matching the angle of the hair as it's coming down. Yeah, it's that, or you make them like karst mountains, and so it makes sense that maybe they just stop behind her, or maybe you just have this sort of thing, you know, in the distance, more like that. Yep. What else was there? Number 3, number 4. Number 4 is, I feel like you can get some more color or interest out of this horizon line by, just grabbing some more, something a little different, like the blue. Just letting it brighten up, either along the skyline or across the water. I'm thinking the sky would be lighter. If it's clouds, it's going to be lighter. And just let there be a little bit more distinction between the two of those. You could actually add some color back into that. So that's something I would think. They're just so similar right now, and there's not that much color on them. Number 5, which is the mouth. I guess I had 2 number 5s anyway. On this, it's just, I love the creature as a whole. With the mouth, though, I would expect to see a little bit of something in there. It's just featureless. Maybe it's got like a little ridge on the top of it that comes down. You know, maybe it has a little ridge. Maybe it has little things that I don't even know what they are. Like little strand things that kind of stick up. They're not teeth, right? They're like thick hairs of some kind that absorb things that fold back into the mouth. Maybe he's singing. He's got a big tongue. He's got rows of teeth. He's got some sort of baleen, right? That grows in different patterns. Something. So it's not just this perfect kind of opening to it. Oh, that's not what I meant. Okay, and the last part was the shape of this thing is a little odd. That we're seeing the front of this as a pretty good angle. Like if we're to look at this on a plane, we've got that, and then it's going backwards. Right? So we've got a pretty good view of the front of it. It's turned to us a good deal. But On the back, it feels like this is curving, and it's not continuing that plane, right? It's not continuing that angle. And that it should have a lot more body on this side. And it feels like there's all the tendrils on this one part of it, but where are all the tendrils that come off that side? Because they would be over here. There should be a lot more tendrils on this part. And maybe even less over here. Like you could take out some of these. Because it's all on just this one half of the body on this side. Hopefully that makes sense. So we've got to round it off. Otherwise it has this weird sort of bend on it. Yeah. I mean, I love the character. I can't really see anything about the character. I like the character. Very well handled. Lots of little visual interest to it. Great expression to the character. So, I mean, that's all good for me, man. Solid stuff there. Okay, that is all the reviews. We'll do a quick recap of what the new challenge is, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's already 10 o'clock here for me, and I need to get back home. So the new challenge is Legend of Ganon. For those who weren't able to join earlier, this is a reimagining of the characters of Legend of Zelda. This is a character design challenge, not necessarily an illustration challenge. There's no background to this. And what you're wanting to do is give me an older, grizzled version of Link, an older, wizened version of Zelda, and a darker, more monstrous version of Ganon. This right here, obviously you can see it. If you want to read it all, you can just pause it and read it. The notices are, reviews are for patrons at the $10 level or above. Patreon.com/swatches if you want to get in. You can join the challenges at any time, but you don't have to submit a sketch in order to submit a final. Next live stream will be at 2 p.m. CST. That's the earlier time, 5 hours earlier than it is today, in honor of the European viewers, so that they can not have to stay up to ungodly hours to watch it. And we will have a random winner who is able to submit both a sketch and a final during this, and they will have a free product of their choice from the store. And we do have the character design ebook on sale. So you want to go check that out. That is on artstation.com/Clint Cearley/store. There's multiple stores, but you can go check it on that one. And if you're wanting one-on-one art consultations, video chats with me, that is possible. Go for more information at artmentor.com. Joshua asks, does the Patreon content get released today or tomorrow for those who want to join in before the deadline? It is going out right after I finish this. I was trying to get it done before the stream, and I just got finished loading it, but I've got to send out the messages. I have to send out the messages and be able to send it over. And it'll probably go off in the next hour. But if you want to, then you can just go purchase it at the store if you haven't already signed up. So it will be on Making Jace, the image I did for Magic the Gathering, Jace the Ingenious Mind Mage. And I focus on the things that I had to learn in order to do that particular piece. You do see the entire creation process. And we focus on talking about painting like falling water, dapple light, talk about using references, doing some stuff on foliage. And remember, the people at $20 level will receive 10 good pages of exercises based on stuff that we covered in the video. And you can practice some of that stuff as well as designing some of your own scenes. And $20 level also has access to the video library, which is several hours worth of really good in-depth art critique with paint overs that I've done for other patrons. So, and there's a little cheat sheet that you'll be able to have for that. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you everyone for joining, and until you see next time, keep drawing.